Deb Dana, you are so welcome to Livsenergipodden. How are you today?
I am well. It's lovely to be here with you.
So you are around the Chicago area?
I am. I'm outside Chicago in what we call Chicagoland, which is
Chicago.
includes Chicago and all the suburbs. Mhm.
So we just spoke a few minutes before, and you are also working on spring where you are, right?
Yes, we're trying to find spring. At the moment, we might be in what I might call mud season. I don't know if you have mud season there as well, but yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have a dog perhaps that you walk with in the
I I
woods?
I don't. I have a cat who is my best friend at the moment, and but he's an indoor cat, so he doesn't bring his muddy feet in. But I have two grandchildren who live 5 minutes away, and they love to be out walking and bring everything in. So it's great.
Because I'm in the woods every day, and let me tell you, there's mud everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what kind of cat do you have?
He is a beautiful black cat. And he was a rescue cat. He was found wandering around near my hometown in Maine, the other place I live, and it was just as the pandemic was beginning, and we were petless. My husband and I were petless at the moment, and decided we've got to find a pet. And we thought a cat would be good because a dog. My husband was very sick for a long time, so a dog would have been too taxing. So we got his name's Buddy the cat, and we walked into the Animal Refuge Society, and he came right up and followed me around, and I think he chose us. So he is such a sweetheart, just wants to be connected to a person all the time.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He's my co-regulator. It's lovely. My nervous system and his nervous system are doing a dance together. It's lovely.
That's fantastic. So, Deb, you are here to talk about the nervous system today because we are about to launch your book, Anchored, in Sweden. So, in Swedish, it's called Förankrad. It's actually the same meaning as anchored, being anchored.
Mm.
Yeah. We
Beautiful.
are
Say that again.
förankrad.
I like that. It's lovely.
Yeah. So when you have a boat,
Mm,
you you release the anchor down, and that's when you get förankrad. So it's
mm,
just like anchored.
lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a very nice, it's a very nice title, I think, because we always, in our with our audience that I told you about, spiritually interested, we talk a lot about being anchored and rooted.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting because the words are interesting, aren't they? Some people talk about being rooted or grounded or held, and there are all sorts of words. For me, anchored really was the word because as in Sweden, an anchor, I grew up around boats, and an anchor connects you to the seafloor, so connects me to my regulated space, but allows you to move around it, right? It gives you some space for the boat to move just a bit. And for me, that's my experience of being held in regulation. I have room to move a bit, not just feeling rooted. To me felt too stuck almost. So I liked the sense of anchored. Yeah.
Way. Yeah, to
Mm,
sway a bit, yeah.
yeah.
But still have an anchor to find your center again? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, are you a writer, or did you become a writer because you did something that you not needed to write about?
Yeah, I think first and foremost I would have called myself a clinician. I'm a social worker, and that's my passion. And then I discovered Steve Porges's polyvagal theory and discovered Steve, who became a friend and mentor and colleague. And that's when I needed to move from simply being a clinician to bringing his work into the clinical world. And to do that, I started creating and writing, and because his work is both brilliant and deeply scientific, so a difficult read. And so, my work was to translate the science into everyday language, because as you and I talked about a little bit ago, we all have a nervous system, and I think every human needs to understand how the nervous system works so that they can become an active operator of their nervous system. And so to do that, I needed to find ways to bring polyvagal theory to curious humans, to the clinical world as well, and not lose the essence of the science.
Yeah. So when you say you're a clinician, in what department, in what area?
So I was a social worker who specialized in treating people with complex trauma. So I worked as part of a group. We had a four-person group practice, and we treated individuals and families who had experienced some sort of traumatic event. So that's where my roots are. My mental health clinician roots are in the world of developmental complex trauma. Mm.
Mm. And so let's move into the polyvagal theory.
Mhm.
Polyvagalteorin in Swedish. So it's
Oh,
exactly the same.
it's lovely. I love that. I love hearing the words in other languages. It's such fun to hear that and to bring it alive for other people. So yes, polyvagal theory,
Mm.
which is the theory of the autonomic nervous system, the theory of our biology that helps us understand how we are human.
Yeah. So it sounds like a very scientific name, if you could say. So if you were able to give it a new name, what would you call it?
Ooh,
That is
that
more, generic.
I
Where
know it. Polyvagal is a scientific name, and was named because Steve's work was really describing these two different pathways. So poly for more than one, vagal for the vagus nerve. I don't know, what would I call it? Theory of human regulation. I don't know. It's hard to think, because what it really is, it helps us navigate the world um,
Mm.
with an awareness of how our biology is creating our experience.
So you have one definition that I just love, and I wonder if I remember it. It's it I know it in Swedish. It's about learning to fall in love with life.
Fall in love with life and take the risks of living. Yes, that's what polyvagal theory is. It's the science of how we do that. How are we able to fall in love with life and take the risks of living? Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sort of my expression of how do we understand this? And I think it's so lovely to help us really be in that place where we are connected enough to ourselves, to others, to the world around us, and to spirit. Those four pathways of connection. And polyvagal theory helps us understand how we can connect to those so that we can just love life and find joy and meaning and purpose and passion. Mm.
So you mentioned four pieces. So we have spirit, ourself,
For ourselves, others, and the world around us.
world around. So
Mm.
those four are kind of um how would you say the four pillars of.
Yeah, the four pillars of connection that are available to us as humans. And all of them are at work in our lives, and we focus more on one than another sometimes. I think in those four pathways, um, some of us travel one more than others. For me, I'm pretty deeply connected to self. I've done this work for a long time. My work is connecting to others, so that's there. I'm learning to really appreciate the world around me in a new way. And then my connection to spirit, as I've, talked about and written about, is an unfolding process for me. I in my growing up, I grew up in a household where um, there was not a religious practice, not a lot of spiritual awareness, probably more um, cognitive, mm, scientific, intellectual. And so as I've, come into my own life and grown up, I've, discovered the spiritual pathway, and I'm fascinated by it, and I'm still exploring it as I think many people when I teach and when I'm out talking tell me the same, that it's a pathway that they're on somewhere, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it cool that life gives you like new chapters
Yeah.
to unfold
Absolutely.
throughout? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really lovely, and I think I just turned 71, so there's the age, piece. My husband died about 6 months ago, so there's that
Mm.
transition. So there's all sorts of new chapters, and I think understanding how my nervous system is supporting me, right? Sometimes in ways that feel very, very helpful, and other times in ways that I know are a survival response that the nervous system is feeling a need for,
Mm.
but is not moving me forward in a path that I want to take. But then I have to turn toward my nervous system and ask the question, what does my nervous system need? Because it's giving me a message something doesn't feel right. And as we all go through one doorway into the next, the nervous system is really there to help guide us, right? To give us information about what feels nourishing, what feels draining, right? Because my brain can give me great stories about what I should be doing, right? At this time in my life, I should be doing, there's a whole list. But my nervous system, listens to that and has a different idea. My nervous system is going to direct me in a direction that feels sustainable. Whereas my brain is going to my brain, especially, is a very driven experience sometimes and says, do this, do this, do this. But my nervous system says, slow down, wait a minute, take your time. And that goes on for every human. Your brain, your nervous system are in a conversation,
Mm.
and the brain makes up some great ideas, but the nervous system is going to have the last say, right? And if we
In
listen
what
to
way? In what
well,
way?
if we
Because
if we listen to our nervous system, we will move forward with some physical and um, psychological health, well-being.
Mhm.
If we don't listen to the nervous system, if we follow the nervous system will speak louder and louder by giving us physical symptoms, by taking us into anxiety, depression, overwhelm, and it will get more and more intense in those responses because it wants us to pay attention.
Mhm.
So what really happens is the nervous system sends the information to your brain, and
Mhm.
your brain's job is then to take that information and create a story that makes sense of it. Unfortunately, or just the way we're wired, the brain often wants to be the leader and doesn't listen to the body. Then we get in trouble. We suffer, right? That's when we suffer. So the work, I think, and my passion in understanding this is to help people listen to the nervous system. We're not taught to do that, right? So how do we tune in to the nervous system and listen and ask the question, what is my nervous system needing in this moment? Right? Because if we can ask and answer that, then we will move towards a pathway of connection, of
Mhm.
safety, of well-being, of being able to be with others in the world differently. which I think is so needed today. Mhm.
Yes, so needed. So what you're saying, let me just draw a parallel. So what you are describing here is, I mean, listening to me in in the sphere of the spiritual, interested, uh, we talk a lot about, like I said, being grounded, rooted, and so on. And that's more, we're talking a lot about intuition. And I know
Mhm.
that we are going to talk about
Neuroception. Yep.
neuroception.
Mhm. Yep.
So I'm thinking what you have here, what you are presenting is more of a science and theory behind the work that we already do.
Yes. Yes. And I say that often when I teach that we're putting the science underneath what you already intuitively know to do. Right? You instinctively know to do these things, whether it's in your clinical work or in your spiritual path or your everyday life. You know what to do, and I'm letting you know the science underneath it, which I think is so helpful to understand the why underneath, the what or the how. So absolutely. And that spiritual sense of being connected to something greater than
Mm,
ourselves, that emerges from a regulated nervous system.
mm,
You move out of regulation into one of the survival states. Your survival strategy does not allow you to feel that sense of oneness and that connection to something greater than yourselves, or that connection to the planet and the people. Right. So again, it's based on your biology. Right? It takes you out of that oneness into a me against you, us against them
mm,
place, which is a survival strategy, or it takes you into the place of feeling as though you're untethered, disconnected from everybody, the other survival strategy that your nervous system brings. So again, if we can learn to come to safety and connection, we can also bring alive that spiritual connection.
mm. Would you say that, because we are going to talk more about the polyvagal theory and the benefits that it can bring us, and more perhaps concrete exercises and what we can do. So would you say that you don't need to have a big trauma in life in order to have benefits from this theory? Or who should benefit, who can benefit from this?
Right. I love that question because what I'm going to say is every human being can
Mm,
benefit because we all are living with a nervous system. The nervous system is is directing your life. And so I think it's important to understand how it works and be able to work with it. Right. And so every human, I think if I had my way, every kid in school would learn about their nervous system. And then we would just build that into every part of life, not just the clinical world. It's brilliant for the clinical world. It's also amazing for families, for parents, partners, for schools, for the medical, for anywhere, because you and I are having a nervous system to nervous system connection right now.
mm.
Right? That is what is driving our ability to then communicate and talk and feel comfortable with each other, right?
I'm
And
sorry.
so if
Mm,
yeah, yeah. Need some water. Yeah. So for me, I think everybody should know the basics of the nervous system, which you talked a bit about neuroception a moment ago. That's one of the basic principles of polyvagal theory, neuroception, which again, I love the word. Steve created that word.
and in Sweden, it's called neuroception.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. That's the nervous system's way of listening,
Mhm.
right? And
We call it,
neuroception.
we call it, or perhaps it's actually from the book, the intuition of the nervous system.
Yep, yeah, I call it autonomic intuition,
Yeah.
right? Which is, a gut feeling, an intuitive sense. That really is your nervous system
Mhm.
taking in information. And again, the nervous system has 3 pathways it does that. It listens to what's happening inside your body.
Mhm.
So everything that's going on inside, and then it's listening to the environment around you because the environment is such a cue of either welcome or warning, right? It
Mhm.
helps us feel safe or not, right? And then the third pathway is between nervous systems. So your nervous system and mine are sharing information below the level of our brain, right? So those
So then I
3.
must ask
Yes.
you,
Mm,
because I feel safe with you, and
mhm.
what I have no nervousness. I think that I can be myself, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So what would you, when you don't have that setting, when you meet someone, because um every day or
Mhm,
almost every day I
mhm,
meet people that I'm a little bit, reluctant to or hesitant
mhm,
to, and
mhm.
tense. So
Yep.
so what happens? How can we?
So your nervous system is getting cues of safety or danger. And for you and me, there's an abundance of cues of safety, right? My nervous system feels very comfortable with you, right? Your smile, your face, the way you move, the tone of voice, all of these are ways we share nervous system to nervous system. And like you, I may be out in the world and I meet somebody and I go, "Ooh, no, thank you." Right? And my brain is going to make up a story afterwards, but it comes from a nervous system thinking something doesn't feel quite right. Right? Happens for us all the time. When we get a sort of like an I'm not sure, then I think we should explore further. If we get a no, then I think we should trust that and just go on with our world. And maybe later you want to go back and reflect and say, I wonder what it was about that. But in that moment, just trust your nervous system, right? Because what it's saying is there's a cue of danger, there's some cue of danger
Mhm.
that makes this connection feel unsafe.
Mm,
And oftentimes those cues are based on our past experience.
mm,
Right? We may have had an experience with someone and the person we're now meeting moves in the way that's familiar or has a tone of voice or language that feels familiar. There's something that feels familiar to a past moment, or it might be just in this moment, it does not feel safe.
mm.
Right? But that is your nervous system is sending that information all the time. In my work, what I've discovered is many people have been taught to not listen to that, right? To override that,
Yeah.
to think that, there must be something wrong with me or, I'm not going to listen. I'm going to go ahead and do whatever it is that you're thinking of doing. And we often pay the price for that. We find out later that, oh, I should have listened, right? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very true. So, okay, listen to your, it's a gut instinct kind of,
Mhm.
but there is
Yeah.
an anatomic reason to it.
Yes.
Yeah. The
Yes, and you
nervous
can
system.
afterwards, you can go back and reflect, and you can look at what were the cues
Yeah.
that happened inside my body that were in the environment and that happened between my nervous system and that other nervous system. And you can make a list. What felt dangerous? What felt safe? Right? And it becomes a simple equation. When the cues of danger outweigh the cues of safety, your
Mm.
neuroception is going to be one that says, get away, don't connect.
Mm.
Right. But it is interesting, I think, to go back and reflect on what were those cues.
Definitely, and reflection, we can learn so much from it
Yes.
in life in total, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what we often discover is that when we do this over and over, there are certain cues of danger that are going to activate my nervous system. Certain
Yeah.
environments that feel unsafe, certain mannerisms or people or movements that feel unsafe, and then I can begin to know that about
Yeah.
myself because this really is about knowing your nervous system. I call it befriending. You befriend your nervous system. You get to know how it works and then you can work with it.
Mm. And I know that you present several exercises and how to's in order to get to know it. And it's concrete in many ways, and sometimes it's more, of a of letting us know of how to sense, and it's not do this one step, one, two, three. It's
Right.
more like, okay, so it's more of a how does that, yeah. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
and I like this sense that it's a moving experience because the nervous system is never static. It's always moving in small ways and sometimes in great big ways. And so to get to know how your nervous system sends you a message that you are, in a state of regulation. We have three states, three basic states that the nervous system moves in and out of. And, that state of connection and regulation we call the ventral vagal state for the scientific name, the place of safety and connection, you know,
Mhm.
and I invite people to name that in any way they want for themselves because it's such fun to give it your own name, right?
Ventralvagal. Ventralvagal är
Mhm.
då, how did you say? So ventral vagal was the sense of
Safety and connection.
safety and connection. Yes.
Yeah. So then the question is, how does your nervous system send you that information? How does your body feel when you're in that place of regulation? Right? I often
How
feels
does it feel for you? What kind of
I
evidence
often
do you
yeah,
get?
I feel a flowing energy. I feel um present. I feel organized. I feel ready. I feel like I can successfully move through the day. It's that sort of a feeling. And then sometimes the energy is more of the joyful, happy, playful. And then other times it can be really passionate and purpose. So there are all sorts of flavors.
Mhm.
The way
And the
you
safety
know
part.
right. The way you know you're in this place is your neuroception is one of safety,
Yeah.
right? So I'm feeling safe, anchored in the world, and then all these different ways of that coming to life emerge. So I feel relaxed and flowing in my body. My thoughts are usually have some possibility or options or readiness, right? It's a lovely place to be,
Yeah.
right? And none of us are there all the time, right?
Mhm.
That's the thing to remember.
Mm.
All of us are there sometimes. Every human is in this place at some point during the day, even if it's only for a tiny moment,
Yeah.
right? But none of us are there all the time,
Yeah.
right?
So I'm going to give you an assignment, a very, very short one, and see
Okay.
what you think about it. So yesterday I had that kind of day. Everything was just happy-go-lucky, flow, and I was in such a good mood. And this morning I woke up and just I felt stressed from the first waking moment, and I've been hunting myself the entire day. So if I were introduced and already practiced the polyvagal theory, what could I have done in order to just
Mhm.
smooth things out this morning?
So when you woke up and you felt stressed, was it that we have two different ways we go when we feel stressed? Did you feel like you were flooded with energy and just could not get where you needed to go? You couldn't make it work so that you were always sort of searching, or did you feel like you were just empty and had no energy to even meet the day? Which was it?
No, more of the first one, and I felt that I needed answers quicker than I got it, and
Yeah.
frustrated.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So that's what we call the sympathetic nervous system response. That's that anger, anxiety response, that drivenness, have to, should place that you found yourself in when you woke up, which is a hard way to wake up and start the day, right? So, you know, th- what I what one of the things I love to do with people is I love to have them create a list of their anchors And so if you and I created a list of your anchors, and we can do that in a moment so that people can have the experience, then you would have something to turn to, and that would help you feel a little more of that regulated energy because you would already have done it. Right. So we'll create the anchors in a minute. The other thing you can do that people often do is they will, have simple things that remind them that regulation is possible. Some people have breath practices.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have a breathing practice. Many people do. I don't, but many people do. I love music, so I will turn on music and it just helps regulate my system. I will often look outside at nature because nature regulates the nervous system. There are so many studies that let us know nature is an autonomic system regulator. So, and movement, gentle movement, a rhythmic movement, right, helps regulate. So those might be some of the things you could reach for. Let's talk about anchors for a moment, because
Yes.
anchors are a practice we can create beforehand and then reach for. And their
So anchors
category.
are different than music, movement, nature.
Yeah, the
Oh,
music, movement, nature, breath practices are ways to come to regulation. Anchors are specific to each person, and you write a list of them so that when you want to reach for some more regulation, you would go to one of those categories. It's who, what, where, and when. So
who, where,
who we start with, who is a person who, when you are around them or you think about them, you feel that sense of regulation and welcome and connection.
when? Okay.
Right. So
So
we
it
would
could be
write the name of a person. It could
right.
also be a pet because our mammalian pets have that nervous system experience as well.
Mm,
So a living person or a pet. And then once you've done that, you could expand it to be um, ancestors you haven't met, but you feel a connection with. It could be spirit guides, spiritual beings, animal guides. So we can expand
mm,
once I like to start with a living, breathing person who we have that experience with. So that's the who. The what is a very small thing you might do to remind yourself, right? I often will, again, pick up a beach stone. I have an object that I love beach stones. I walk a beach a lot, so I collect stones. And so, if I hold my beach stone, it reminds me of both of being at the beach and of the regulation and connection. So, what
and
would
it's
be a what for
grounded.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think. My head is like spinning. Okay, so what would be something for me? And all of a sudden, it means a lot to me to find the right one, and not just say something quick, but
Take
actually
your
think
time.
about
Take your time. Yeah.
what that would be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the lovely part of this, is that you can sit and you can reflect, and then you can add to your list,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I know my list because I've used them for a long time, but
Yeah, of
it's
course.
always fun to explore and to think, who would I put on for my who?
Yeah.
What would I put on for a what?
Yeah.
Right?
So
And
when we
then
talk about this, I find myself. So I have a dog and I have a cat, and
beautiful.
the cat is male and the dog is female. The dog is a bit more like me, but
Mhm.
she's also neurotic, and I'm not neurotic.
Oh.
But she is a bit anxious and
Oh.
insecure. So I
Mhm.
wouldn't choose her. I love
Mm,
her to death, but still.
right.
But
She's
I
not an
would
anchor.
go
Yes. Yeah.
exactly. I would go to my cat because
Beautiful.
he's
Yeah.
just
Uh-huh.
he's
Yeah.
just grounded
And
energy.
see, as you talk about him, you can feel it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes alive as we remember those moments. Absolutely. Is there a person? Is there a human being who's a who as well for you?
Yes, my husband is very
Mm,
grounded also.
nice.
He's my
Nice.
opposite.
I love that. There you go.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that our human anchors, we can have different ones. Like I have someone who's an anchor in my work realm, and I have another person who's an anchor in my more, fun personal realm, right? So you can have people in different parts of your world as your anchors.
Of course.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when we talk about it, I feel another reason to choose whom you spend time with different days.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Uh, and it's your nervous system that's guiding that decision making. Right. Some days I may feel as though, oh, I really want to be with, this group of people. And other days that group feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right.
But
So
if
to
you
listen
choose
to
the
that.
wrong one, you also feel that, why am I here? Why am I doing this today? Because you're overriding your
Exactly.
nervous system.
Exactly. And then you go back and say, oh, here were all the cues that I didn't listen to. And sometimes we don't know the cues until we're in the experience and then we can look back. But once we learn to listen, we then take in that information. Sometimes I have to go do the thing that my nervous system says not a good idea. I have to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And then I can, collaborate with my nervous system and say, I have to do this. I mean, I had a medical procedure a year ago that my nervous system felt very unsafe around, and yet you have to do it. So then you figure
Mhm.
out, how do I work with my nervous system? What can I bring in that can soothe it enough so that I can do that because I have to, right?
And
But
what
that
did you bring? What did you do?
I had, my daughter came with me. I
Mhm.
asked a ton of questions beforehand. I made sure that the medical team who was going to be working with me understood what I do for a living and understood the nervous system. So it was a lot of sort of pre-planning, and then I felt, okay, it's I have done what I need to do.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So, and I think when we can do that, when we can say, here's what I need,
Yeah.
and then go ahead and do it, then we can move forward with the difficult things. Right.
So what you are actually saying is that be pragmatic about it, see it
Hmm.
for what it is, and make sure you work with
Yeah.
yourself and not just stay
Right.
in that
Right.
overwhelmed mind.
Right. Right. Because we either go to that overwhelm of anxiety, panic, or anger, rage, or many people go to the hopeless despair, collapse, give up place. Right. Which is another nervous system survival response.
Yeah.
Right. And again, we don't get to choose. So if our people are listening and saying, oh, I go to anxiety, and somebody else says, oh, I go to that collapse place. Right?
Mhm.
That was not a cognitive decision you made. That was a biological decision your nervous system makes for you. Right. And so we don't want to judge people for how they respond. They're responding how their nervous system says this is needed in the moment.
And that is many times due to experiences and yeah, historic.
Yeah, yeah, any kind of experience. My work was with trauma, but every human comes into the world with a nervous system expectation of being met by a regulated human, right? By a nervous system that's regulated. Because when we come into the world, we can't regulate for ourselves, right? We can't do it. We can't survive on our own. And so even if they're just these mismatches that happen without, abuse or neglect or any of that, just mismatches, the nervous system is taking in those experiences and learning about connection.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think there's a human in the world who reaches, adulthood without having mismatches. Ruptures are normal and expected in everyday life, right? The when we suffer, when a rupture happens and they keep happening and there's no reconnection, there's no repair that happens. But ruptures don't cause the problem. It's when the ruptures are left unrepaired and we feel disconnected, then we suffer. Then we suffer and our nervous system begins to protect us differently.
Is it a ruptured nervous system that we're trying to work with in the polyvagal theory, or is it to heal it?
It's interesting. We're polyvagal theory gives us a roadmap so that we can understand when we are regulated and understand when we move out of regulation, and then begin to have ways to travel the pathways back to connection and regulation, right? Because those pathways exist inside every nervous system. Right. I like to say that the nervous system longs to be in regulation. That's the state it's looking for in every human. And I think it inherently knows how to get there, but we need to make sure we uncover those pathways and then travel those pathways often. Right. But the pathways exist.
Yeah.
We don't have to create them anew, that they're wired into our biology, which is a very hopeful message, right? That the pathways to regulation and connection and safety exist. We
Yeah.
just have to find them again and travel them. So, in that way, every time we come back to connection, we build resilience and we build a more regulated nervous system. So, polyvagal theory both, helps us, navigate the ruptures and come back to reconnect.
So you could say that the nervous system also has like a muscle memory. So when you do things many times, you can.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the more you travel the pathway back to connection, the easier it is, the
Mm,
faster you can do it, and the more deeply you can connect
mm,
to that place of presence, awareness, rootedness, groundedness, whatever we want to call it.
yeah.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Every time we do it, and it's interesting because it's the small moments that add up.
Mm,
Right? People think we need this big, huge experience,
yeah.
a day of being present, when really your biology says you need tiny moments over and over. Again, that feels reachable. If you told me I need to be regulated for 8 hours in order to get the benefit of a regulated nervous system, I would give up now, because there is no way, right? But if you tell me, these minutes at a time, micro moments at a time are all you need, I say, oh, I can do that. And I begin to look for those micro moments, right? That's what I call the glimmers,
The
right?
glimmers.
What's
Yeah.
that in Swedish?
Glimmer. It's actually very
I love
similar.
that. Love
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Glimmer. And it's also, yeah, it's, the glimmers of the
Yeah.
lights and the
Yeah.
candle.
Yeah.
So, something in the book says you're talking about well, the small experiences, like for example, if you get a rude SMS text, or you have an intense discussion or argument with your loved ones. So all these things, they can seem, they're just an argument and nothing, you're not going to die from it, but it feels like you're completely out of control. So this is a typical small moment, could you say?
Those are small moments of dysregulation,
Yeah.
absolutely, that can become big,
Yeah.
because we once we move out of regulation into some of that survival energy, it takes over, and our brain no longer has the ability to discern, to problem solve, to see a bigger perspective. We get pulled into a survival story, a story of that moment, right? And we get stuck there. And so that's the moment when we want to be able to again bring a tiny bit of regulation back in. And the way we start doing that is what I call notice and name. Notice, ooh, I think I am feeling, really anxious, angry, disconnecting, to notice it and name it. Because as soon as you notice your nervous system and name what's happening, you are bringing a bit of observing energy in, which is regulating. And it
Yeah.
gets you out of that hole you've just fallen into, where, this tiny, little rude SMS message you got has become, catastrophic, right? And that happens very quickly for all of us. but it's normal, right? So if we can again take that tiny step back and go, wait a minute, my nervous system is telling me something, because your system is telling you something,
Yeah.
right? What is it trying to tell you when it's giving you this big response? Something feels dangerous, unsafe.
Mhm.
And if you can listen to it, then you can say, what does my nervous system need
Yeah.
to not keep going down this pathway right now, right?
So Deb, the funny thing here, or actually, it's not very funny. It's that we have, I think, I can say this. We have an idea that the nervous system is something that we have, but we don't, perhaps we don't see it as a part of us, a part of our personality, kind of. It's rather something that we would like to hide because because you know the old saying about you know people having nerves, or not in a positive way. So I think our association with the nervous system is not something that's useful and practical and workable.
Yeah.
What would you say? I like
Yeah.
this. That's why I like the polyvagal theory, because all of a sudden it kind of shifts the entire scene for the nervous system.
Exactly, and I think, it's so lovely when we begin to look through the eyes of the nervous system, because I can look at this other person, and instead of, thinking how difficult they are, or how
Mhm.
needy they are, or how, rageful they always are, right? I can look and say, "Oh, their nervous system is dysregulated."
Mhm.
And that's causing all of these things to happen for them. Right? Because if I look at you and say, "You are so needy," what do I do with that? I can't change that. But if I look at you and say, "Oh, dysregulated," I can help with that. So it changes how we look at other people,
Mhm.
how we look at what's going on in the world, even as this, dysregulation that's happening. We can work with dysregulation. Right? It becomes not a story about moral meaning or
Mhm.
motivation. It becomes a story about dysregulation and biology, and that's a story I can work with,
Yeah.
right? So I think again it feels very hopeful, right? Because if I listen to my nervous system and it's telling me, anxiety, if I look under the anxiety, nervous system's trying to tell me something.
Mhm.
Anxiety is the symptom, but underneath, if I turn toward my nervous system, it may tell me, you are trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And if you, can rearrange things a bit, it will go much better for you.
Yeah.
Right. But if I just stay with the anxiety, I can't do that. But if I look under the anxiety, what prompted that anxiety? Oh, my nervous system it can't handle everything that I'm saying yes to. Then I have a pathway to doing something different.
Would you
Right.
use the same steps, the how, what, when?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's really the notice and name, turn toward,
Mm.
and listen for just a moment. That's the basic practice.
Mhm.
Notice I'm feeling a little something, whether it's anxiety or anger or sadness or collapse, and naming it, and then turn toward
Mm.
my nervous system and tune in and see, what do I need to know in this moment?
Mm.
That's the basic practice. And so in this moment, my nervous system is saying, you listen, you're gathering the information. And once you've gathered the information, your brain can help you figure out, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right. But we have to start with the body and then invite the brain to use that information. What do I do to manage this differently? Absolutely.
And the what could then be the who, the person who you feel anchored, your
Mhm.
anchors. Yeah.
Yep. My anchors. We did the who, the what. Let's do the where. Because where is so important. Where are the places in your world where when you are there, you feel safe and welcome,
Mm.
right? And, hopefully there's a place, a corner in the place you live, right? Look for a place in nature, it could be a place of spiritual worship. It could be your workplace. We need these places
Mm.
where, we can just enter into them and feel
Mm.
safe and welcome. Right. Yeah. So that's the who, what, where, and then when. When are the moments that predictably repeat that you feel, oh, yes, that's ventral. For me, I'm an early morning person. I love the early morning. And so that's a win for me. I get up and I have a ritual, right? I feed the cat, I make my coffee, I message with my two daughters,
Mm.
and that's like a ventral anchoring, grounding start to my day. And if that gets disrupted, it's hard for me.
Yeah, of course.
But those things, those who, what, where, when anchors, are the things that we can build into our world and we can reach for
Mm.
when we're feeling, oh, this may be a bit of a challenging day. Let me reach for an anchor and feel that
Mm.
connection first. Yeah.
I think that you've given us lots of tools already. I feel I am hopeful, and I want to start using them. And I think that perhaps doing that list of the who, what, where, and
And when.
when.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lovely list, and we keep adding to it. We find new anchors.
Mm.
We can also think about what I call touchstones, which are sort of the smells that help you feel safe and connected. I again grew up around the sea and by the pine trees, and so the smell of pine and ocean are scents that I love, and I have a hand cream that I love. I have a candle. So scents. And then, I thought when I get up this morning, what do I want to wear? Because the things we wear can be very regulating for us. Right.
Mm.
And a dear friend of mine gave me this scarf that I wrapped up, and I thought this is perfect. I feel wrapped and held in
Mm.
connection. And we all have these things.
Yes,
And
that's
when you
very
bring
true.
the yeah, and when you think about them and think, "Oh, this is to help regulate my nervous system," it just comes alive in a different way.
Yes,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
much so. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, so we're gonna do that more with our audience as well, and I hope that they will like it too. So is there so you have a ritual. I'm very sorry to hear about your husband.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an interesting time in life, and many of your part of your book group will probably be joining me in that. I was a caregiver for many, many, many years, and then he then he died, and this life after loss is an
Mm.
interesting experience to navigate, and I am so thankful that I know my nervous system, because I can listen to what my nervous system says I need rather than what a lot of people out there want to tell us we need, which is very true for the grief and loss process. There many many ways when people say this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Whenever someone tells you you should be doing something, I encourage you to take that with a grain of salt, because what they're telling you is what their nervous system thinks should happen, not what your nervous system thinks should happen. So yeah, I'm following my nervous system as I, navigate this new life after loss
Yeah.
journey. Mm.
What's your best practice to regulate yourself in a moment of grief that's too hard to bear at the moment?
You know, b- um, I haven't found the practice that works for that. It's very interesting. I'm still sort of trying to figure out. And, as most people know, you get caught off guard by grief. Like you have a day that when you feel, okay, now I'm figuring out this next phase, and then the next day you're totally back in it again. So I think for me, the best practice I have is to bring some self-compassion,
Yeah.
right? I often put my hand on my heart and just go, "Oh, right. Here
Mm.
we are again. It's okay." It's that sense of I don't know what the map looks like, and it's okay, right? Yeah. Yeah. For me, this movement of hand on heart is very reminding me that you know my nervous system does know the way, and I just need to trust I'm moving in the right direction. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and just also acknowledging and showing your body that you are acknowledging
Yeah.
where you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That practice, that notice and name practice is so helpful and so simple. Just,
Yeah.
oh, right, here we are again. So simple and yet so powerful. Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing is that can be hard in that is to give yourself the time, because going back to this morning, I was
Mhm.
super stressed. I didn't even have time, or not have time. I didn't even give myself time to turn on the radio and listen to music, because music is also something that
Yeah.
regulates me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so sometimes we just let that overwhelming state drive us around.
Yep. Yep. And it will. It will do that because it thinks it needs to in order to help you survive. So, as you reflect on it now, you can think, the next time this happens, my intention is to turn on the radio and take 2 minutes
Mm.
to listen, see what happens.
Yeah.
Right. And then, you might say 1 minute, you might say whatever your nervous system says. Right. What we want to do is we want to create an intention that's tiny enough that we can do it successfully.
Yeah.
Right. Because I would have clients that would say, oh, I'll listen to half an hour of music and that will help. And say, okay, ask your nervous system, does that feel doable? No. Right. Does 2 minutes feel doable? Yes. Go for 2 minutes.
And
Right.
in that case, you have so many easy and very effective breathing techniques that you can do anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sighing is the one that I love. I'm not a fan of breath practices because I struggle with breath practices, but sighing is something that, and the science of sighing is so lovely because it interrupts the dysregulation just a tiny bit, right? And we
How
all
do you do
sigh.
that? Is it?
Yeah, so we all sigh spontaneously many
Yeah.
times a
Yeah.
day, right? But we can intentionally sigh. So
Mhm.
when you woke up this morning and you were in that anxiety, you could have sighed a sigh of frustration or a sigh of anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? And that would automatically give a tiny moment of interruption, right? A
Yeah.
sigh of frustration, a sigh of you can have a sigh of despair, and just the sigh of despair gives sound to the despair and interrupts it just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And then you can have a sigh of relief or contentment when you find regulation,
Mhm.
right? So again, it's a
Like a confirmation, I'm back.
exactly. And it's a gentle way to use breath,
Mm.
which for me, I'm always looking for the gentle ways to do something. So yeah. Next time you
So
wake up, turn on the music or have a sigh or, whatever. And you can, play around with it, experiment, see what works for you.
I will, definitely. So when you talk about sighing, I was actually talking to my cousin right before our interview, and she's a chiropractor and works a lot with the vagus nerve, especially with the babies
Ah,
that
yeah.
have colic
Yeah.
and stuff. And so it was a very interesting conversation because she knows a lot about the vagus nerve as well. And she was talking one thing about the humming practice.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
sigh
Yep.
is also,
Yep.
something that you.
Sighing, humming. I love humming because I haven't met anyone who can't hum, right? Many people say they can't sing, but I
Mhm.
haven't met anyone who says I can't hum. So humming is great, and it does activate your system of regulation and connection. So, get up and hum along to the music or yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other breath practice that is fun is bubble blowing,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Like
fun
for
to do. Get
real, like getting
Yep.
it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, get out the wand, blow the bubbles. Yep, because that is again regulating it's called resistance breathing. So when you just blowing through a straw, blowing bubbles, that exactly, that brings more regulation to your nervous system as you do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what they say when you are doing breathing exercises. You should, and you need to stress down. Then you should
Mm.
focus on your exhale.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Exhale lowers the heart rate, brings more regulation.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that we're over an hour.
Uh,
Are you in a hurry?
nope, I am good. I am
Okay.
good.
So let me
Having a
steal you
lovely
for
time with you.
another few minutes.
Mhm,
So I would love to just explore a few words, like terms
mhm.
that has to do with the polyvagal theory, and that we will find in the book over and over and over again. So regulation and regulate
Mhm,
is something that we talk about a lot, you and I,
mhm.
and in the book as well. So what kind of term is that?
Well, regulation and then its opposite, dysregulation, are the states of the nervous system. Regulation is when our ventral system, the system of connection and safety, is overseeing our biology, and we're in a state of balance, a state of all of our states are connected. Our digestion is working well, our heart rate, our breathing, our energy level, everything is working in harmony. That's a state of biological regulation.
And then we have, well, neuroception, we talked about, but let's
Mhm.
just recap that one more time. Neuroception.
So neuroception is your nervous system's intuitive process. So you could think about it as a gut instinct or intuition. And it's really on a biological level, the way your nervous system is getting information and then it's going to move you either into connection or into protection.
Yes.
Well, you've got the names of the three parts of the hierarchy,
Yes.
which is in there. And the hierarchy is the
Hierarchy of
way
what?
the autonomic hierarchy. So it's the hierarchy of your nervous system, meaning you are going to move, every human moves from a state of connection, which is called ventral vagal.
Mhm.
When the world feels too overwhelming for whatever reason, we move down the hierarchy into sympathetic anxiety, anger, fight, and flight. That's the first survival strategy. And if that doesn't resolve the problem, we go to the bottom of the hierarchy to dorsal vagal collapse, disconnect. And so that's the hierarchy: ventral, sympathetic, dorsal, safe and connected, fight and flight, shut down, collapsed. And it's called a hierarchy because we move through it in a predictable order. We go
Mm.
from safe and connected to fight and flight to disconnected and collapsed. That's every human moves in that order. And so that's the beauty of understanding polyvagal theory is we know if I'm in shutdown and collapse, I have to bring some energy back into my system to go through some of that mobilization to get back to connection. Right. So
So
yeah, go ahead.
if you are a person that, when talking to you, finds oneself that I am the person who falls down to collapse very easily. I
Mhm,
mean, if it's hard to find yourself and um,
yep.
reflect and stop yourself
Yes.
already in the sympathetic part,
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
can you do that in the collapse?
Yeah, and I am a person, you know, we talk about everyone, I say everyone has a home in ventral, in regulation and safety and connection. I call that home,
Mhm.
right? And then we have a home away from home, which is what you just were referencing.
Mhm.
My home away from home is in dorsal collapse, shutdown, disconnect.
Mm.
which means for me, that's where I end up, right?
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time in anxiety and anger, in fight and flight. I move through it, but I land in collapse and disconnect, right? And that is just the way my nervous system is set up, is wired, right? It's been my lifelong history.
Mhm.
From collapse and shutdown, you need to have a list of gentle things, gentle resources you would reach for to begin to bring some energy back, like listening to music, like looking out the window, like perhaps a gentle walk, a remembering connecting with a person, easy things to reach for. Because in collapse, you feel alone, lost. Right? That's the experience in collapse. And so we have to have things to reach for that help us remember we are connected, we are present
Mhm.
and here. If sympathetic is your home away from home, anxiety, anger, flood of energy, you don't have to reach for energy. You simply have to figure out, how do I organize the energy that I already have too much of? Right? So in that place, you want to do something because you have all this energy, and it might be get outside, go for a walk, call somebody up, sing along to the music, dance. I mean, all these things that use energy that you have in abundance, but it's chaotic, disorganized. So you can see they're opposite strategies, right? In collapse, how do I bring some energy in? Right. And in sympathetic, fight and flight, it's what do I do with all this energy? Right. Because we can't simply get rid of it. Right. You don't.
It's so easy when you describe it this way.
Yeah. Right. Right. And I think if we can think of it in simple terms,
Mm.
like I've got too much energy, what do I do? Or I don't have enough energy, what do I do?
Mm.
Then we can begin to create our lists. And I invite everybody to make a menu for themselves so that you have a lot of different options. Because
Of
sometimes
anchors, right?
anchors, and
Mm.
also, yeah, anchors, yes. And then also just plain old resources
Yeah.
that you want to reach for, right? Because sometimes when I'm in that collapse, I have enough energy. I'm not so deep in collapse. I do have enough energy that I like to go out, and I have there's a nature preserve that I can get to within 2 minutes and just go for a walk.
Mm.
Sometimes that's exactly what I need. Other times, the thought of moving out the door to go for a walk is way too overwhelming. And in that case, I might um, look at an image that is a special image for me, right? I have a photograph that my kids blew up and printed for me of one of our trips we went on together, right? Just an image that I can do.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to have a variety of resources that you can choose. Some days in sympathetic, you might say, I'm going to go for a run.
Mm.
And other days, not going to do that. I'm going to go, I don't know, you're going to go for a swim, or you're going to go, you're going to, I think we all need to have a friend that we can message and rant to, that we can, just offload to, and they're fine with that. So sometimes that's what we do, right? Yeah. Yeah.
But what can we expect? So it sounds so now we have the situations described, we have the tools to come back. And but what can we expect? So I'm stressed out, my head is spinning, I don't even turn on the music. But if I did turn on the music,
Mhm.
what can I expect from that small tool?
Turn on the music, and you begin to notice that your distress is resolving in some way. You're reorganizing just a bit. We
Mm.
want to notice the tiny movement towards a bit more regulation and just celebrate that.
Mm.
Right? It doesn't mean that I'm back and fully, present and regulated and ready, but it means, oh, I'm moving in that direction. Beautiful. Because once you start to move in that direction, you'll continue.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
So
noticing the tiny movement. Yep. Yep.
there we have it again, tiny movement, tiny
Exactly.
movement.
Exactly.
So polyvagal theory is all about monitoring and sensing our tiny
Yes.
movements.
Yeah. 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 Which again, even as you say that, feels doable, right?
It
Tiny
feels
mo
doable, but it
Mhm.
also feels, will it make it for me? I mean, because sometimes we need, so do this, 1, 2, 3, boom, you're back on track. But it doesn't work. Life is not like that, is it?
No, life is not that and, you may have a lot on your menu, you may have this 1, 2, 3 thing that works sometimes,
Mm,
right? It may be, you have a ritual that pretty predictably will begin to organize your energy and bring you back to regulation. Beautiful. I always ask people to look for, is there something that's dependable for you in most cases?
mm,
And let's really, you know, illustrate that. Let's really define that.
mm.
And we also have to have other choices because that does not always work. Right. Does
That's
not
true.
always work, but we do wanna look for those. I mean, ritual is wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Ritual is in our lives for a reason because we depend on it.
Mm,
And, if we think about it through the nervous system, you create a ritual and your nervous system walks that pathway.
yeah.
And so when you start that ritual, the nervous system knows where it's going and will continue on. Right.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So meditation is also some
Mhm.
tool, isn't it? Mm.
Meditation is a wonderful tool, and for many, many people, meditation is too big a stretch for their nervous system, right? Nervous system can't do it. Mindful moments, most of us can do. Meditative practice, maybe too much right now for my nervous system, right? So can you find a short way of being in a mindful moment? Right, which again might simply be there's a practice called savoring,
Yeah.
which I love, which is that sort of mindful moment. You notice there's a moment of feeling connected, safe, regulated, okay, whatever, joy, whatever the flavor is, and you stop for 20 to 30 seconds and just be with it. And there's a ton of research about what happens when you do savoring practices. 20 seconds, right? I can just take 20 seconds and soak this in and
Mm.
then go on with my day. Every time you do that, your nervous system gets the benefit of that, right? And you begin to build more of that regulation. Again, tiny moment, right?
It's to
Yeah,
shine some light to your, shine some sunlight into your nervous system
I love
and
that. It's a
heat
lot.
it up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and most people, when I, talk about that, and, some people start and they can savor for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
However long your nervous system can do is wonderful and builds the capacity for regulation. Mm,
So Anchored, Förankrad, that book is all about the nervous system so that we can understand how it works and learn the practices of how to get to know it and
mhm.
work with it and use it whenever we need to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's a
And my
lovely
ho
book, Deb.
well, thank you. My hope is that people will, read the book and, get to know their nervous system, and then it will become the way they navigate life,
Mhm.
right? When I started, polyvagal was a clinical application for me working with my clients, and now it's become how does every human befriend their nervous system and begin to use that information as they navigate their lives. So that's my hope.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic hope. Actually, I do, because I think a lot of people do it, but perhaps they don't understand they can probably feel that this is doing the work for me. But if we understand that there is a scientific reason for what we're doing, and that it actually helps, not just because you think it does, but it actually does help.
Yes.
It regulates us. Then I think it has the potential to spread even more.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when we know our nervous system, we understand the benefits of this, then we can be curious about other people's nervous systems, right? And that curiosity is gonna, help us connect in new ways.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very true. So, just to wrap up, what can we gain from the polyvagal theory and working with our nervous system?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Well, when we learn to become more regulated and return to regulation, we build resilience. Right. And as we build resilience, we experience physical well being and emotional well being, right? Because a regulated nervous system reduces or even resolves the symptoms that we all feel, both the physical symptoms we suffer with and the psychological distress that we carry. A regulated nervous system is at the heart of changing those, of coming into well-being. So that's, I think, what we stand to gain when we befriend our nervous systems.
Yes. Perfect.
Mm,
Wrap up.
good, good.
So, Deb, do you think that you want to say something directly to the Swedish audience
I'm
before
happy
we?
to. Yep, we could do that. We could do that. Now that we've had a lovely conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
we did.
Hello, Sweden. I'm Deb Dana, author of Anchorage, and it is a delight to be speaking to you today. My hope is that you will all begin to befriend your nervous systems and that you will join me in this polyvagal community. You are most welcome as part of the polyvagal family, and that we will begin to change the world one nervous system at a time.
That's lovely. We
Okay.
are going to change the world one nervous system at a time.
Yep. The only way to do it, and we are going to do it. Yes, we are.
It's
Beautiful.
lovely. And the
Good.
nervous system is in all living creatures, wouldn't you
Yeah. Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I mean, our mammalian friends have a nervous system that's very much like ours, and then other species, have their own versions of nervous systems. I think many people who um, communicate with nature. I have a friend who feels very connected to the trees, and I think he would say that the tree has a nervous system, and their nervous systems are connected and talking. So, absolutely, the sea, the ocean, the absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Deb, this was regulating for me.
I'm so glad. That's beautiful. Now you can feel less stressed and you can begin to plan, what do I do if I wake up the next day and feel a little disorganized? Yes. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Yeah. Well,
you
thank
are
you.
you are high profile in the war against anxiety, stress, and you know
Yeah.
overwhelm.
Yes. Let's keep fighting that good fight, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say the image of water behind you is beautiful, by the way. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I am
gorgeous.
also a water person, so
Mhm.
I love the water. I
Beautiful.
lived by the
Yeah,
sea my entire life. Yeah.
love it. Love it. Yeah.
So we
Lovely
have
to
that in
meet you and
common.
spend time together. Mm.
Yes.
And
Very nice.
thanks for bringing Anchored to Sweden. I appreciate that.
I'll let you know how it works.
Yeah, do.
Yeah.
Let's stay in connection.
Yes,
All right.
definitely. Thank
All
you,
right.
Deb. Have a good day now.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.